Hi, okay, shall we start? So, good morning, everyone. My name is Wan Ying, and I'm the co-chair of Business and Women in Business Committee of the British Chamber. As our title suggests, this committee is a forum for members of the Chamber to promote women in business. We have 23 committee members across different industries and company sizes. Together, we push the envelope on gender equality through best practice sharing on company initiatives, policies, current affairs, and the latest research on women at the workplace. The dynamism and passion of our conversations seems at times unparalleled. So in order to support the mission, we look to improve performance by supporting our members with personal development and improving skill sets. In this way, we hope that each one of our members can bring back to our organizations an inclusive and involved way of thinking back to our workplace. I would like to thank our title sponsor for today's event, Barclays. Now back to our event of today, Positive Psychology for Challenging Times. That we have never lived through times like this is a fact and true for everyone here today. COVID-19, circuit breaker, social isolation, and a genuine scare that we may fall sick or not be financially secure are all reasons enough to make us begin a negative loop of thoughts and actions. Some families are torn apart due to immigration issues as countries lock down their borders. Others worry about business viability. Some have never been good at being alone. Depression and anxiety are on the up for adults surveyed in the US, UK, and undoubtedly here in Singapore. More recently, we may even begin to question whether the draconian measures themselves are likely to cause more deaths, especially in third world countries when compared to the actual coronavirus. As we prove successful in flattening the curve and win this battle, maybe our lives remain impoverished by heightened anxiety and depression. Thus, another reason to feel loss of control. So as individuals and leaders of organizations, how then can we retool our mindset so that we can turn the lens from negativity to harnessing creative and energy and thus be productive, especially at our workplace? So I now turn to our speakers who will help us in this journey by giving us a practical toolkit to fall back on. Crystal Lim Lang is a human capital expert and an education pioneer. Dr. Gregor Lim Lang is an expert in the fields of clinical and positive psychology, social emotional intelligence, and mindfulness. They are the authors of best-selling book, Deep Human, Practical Super Skills for a Future of Success, and the co-founders of Forest Wolf, a leadership training and talent development consultancy. If guests would like to ask a question, please find the Q&A function on the floating toolbar along the bottom. I believe Crystal and Greg would also like some interactivity, so please be guided accordingly. Finally, be informed that the session is recorded, and I now hand over to Crystal to take us forward.
Hi everyone, we're so excited to be here today. Like Wan Ying mentioned, we do hope to make this as interactive as possible. So at the bottom of your toolbar, you should find a chat button in the middle of that bottom toolbar. And if you click on that, you should see a chat panel. At various times during this workshop, we will be asking you to type in 1 or 2 words into that chat box in response to what questions we ask you. So with that, we'd like to start off together. And Greg's going to do a practice that we always like to do to arrive together.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. So delighted to be here with you, and thank you, Wan Ying, for the intro. Yeah, you all may have had a busy morning already. I know some of you are managing all kinds of roles while you're working from home. It's really good to be fully present to whatever you're doing. So I'm going to guide us through a mini practice that helps us be present not just in the body, but also have our busy mind fully arrive. So if I can invite you for that to sit up, upright if possible, and have both feet firmly on the floor. And then either closing your eyes or looking down, and bring your awareness into your body for a moment sitting here. Noticing your feet on the floor and sensations at your feet. Noticing where you've placed your hands and sensations at your hands and fingers. Perhaps any tingling, warmth or coolness. Noticing if your hands are heavy or light. Then shifting your focus to your neck and shoulders, noticing if this part of your body is tense or relaxed. Or what other sensations might be noticeable here. And then shift your attention now to the physical sensations of breathing, and take 3 really deep, intentional breaths in and out. Noticing the sensations of each of these breaths. And then take a moment to check in with how you're feeling right now. Be anxious, relaxed, excited. And then find one word for the emotion that you're experiencing right now, and take one more deep breath in and out. And with the next exhalation, open your eyes. And we'll invite you now to type that one word into the chat box. Crystal will demonstrate how you're feeling. Curious.
Torn
From
Victoria
Victoria.
Says, what do you feel,
Great.
Greg?
I'm feeling curious.
Curious as well.
See how the morning will go.
Excited. Anxious. Zen.
Thank you so much. Peaceful.
Wonderful. So we're seeing a variety of emotions come in. And what we want to do in this workshop as well is to create a sense of emotional granularity. That means getting really clear about labeling how we're feeling and getting the language to express it out. Because we know that neuroscience and psychology research suggests that the instant we put a label on what we're feeling, it has the power to engage our logical brain and to down-regulate the emotional intensity of perhaps the negative emotion that we may be feeling.
Yeah, and another really useful technique that comes from both clinical and positive psychology is being able to share your emotions. The more you share them with loved ones or friends or even colleagues, the more you can feel supported, and the more you can also realize that everybody else is also struggling with these emotions from time to time. So thank you so much for sharing.
And it's a little bit ironic because sometimes we feel that when we're feeling difficult emotions, it's often like we don't give ourselves permission to talk about them. We think that if we voice them out, perhaps people will think we're a downer, or maybe you don't feel like you have permission to even feel them in the first place. And what we're here to talk about today is really dispelling some of these misconceptions about how to deal with anxiety and challenging times, and normalizing it in a way because it's perfectly normal and human to have these emotions. There's no such thing as a bad emotion. Every emotion has a particular function and a particular message that it wants to deliver to you. So we'll be unpacking this a little bit more over the course of today. So just want to bring you through a very quick overview. Essentially today we'll be talking about 3 parts of our content. The first part, Greg's going to essentially talk about how to maintain your focus and your positivity. And then we're going to talk about this concept of holding. In a crisis, people need to be held, right? And there's 2 different kinds of holding. The first is interpersonal holding, and the second is institutional holding, which is very useful for all of us leaders, entrepreneurs out there who need to, on a systemic level, hold our teams as well. So without giving too much away, I'm going to hand over to Greg to take us through this first session.
Yeah, so this first one is really, really important, particularly in these times of stress and uncertainty and being so distracted between working from home, if you have kids, looking after them, and trying to do your work and connect with clients. So I want to explore a little bit how your mind works and help you to optimize it. So if we were to compare your mind to a camera, you can zoom in and be really focused on the details of, you know, the report that you're perhaps working on or conversation that you're having, or you can even zoom out and look at the bigger picture of, well, okay, how long might COVID be around? And like in 6 months' time, things might be quite different, and look at the strategy moving forward. But sometimes it may feel like your mind is actually permanently out of focus or just jumping all over the place. And particularly what, and I'm sure most of you can relate to this, our minds seem to be so distracted nowadays between the negative news that are coming our way, messages coming in through all the different channels, whether that's, you know, your messenger, your emails, phone calls. And it's actually creating an epidemic. Wan Ying referred to it already earlier, of anxiety going up, and also rumination about all the stuff that has gone wrong before. You know, why didn't you prepare a better strategy for an epidemic like this? Why did you make certain decisions that are now causing difficulties for you? And that's really moving us out of the present moment, where you have the power to make really wise decisions, and people feeling really, really overwhelmed by this. Now, psychologists actually set out to study how much of the time our brain is out of focus and not in the present moment. So here comes my first question to you guys. How much of the time, what's the percentage of time do you think your mind is actually distracted, confused, not focused on what you're trying to do at any given moment? So if I could invite you to write down a percentage. So if you're thinking 10% of the time, okay, great. 50% of the time, awesome. 60%, 40.
Very
okay.
good.
50, 65. Okay.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Interesting.
Well, you guys are a lot lower in terms of percentages than our normal audiences.
33. Sometimes we get like 80, 90%. Okay, Alex is saying 5. Okay. But it's interesting, if I were to do a quick mean, we're like probably averaging around 40% here. And some are a lot higher. We get 70%. So intuitively, for most of us, we get a sense of, I'm distracted a lot of the time, and it's really hard to stay focused on whatever you're trying to do at any given moment. Now, when psychologists looked at across all kinds of activities, from commuting to working to exercising to having a conversation, they found that on average, it's 47% of the time that our mind is not present. I'll say it one more time, because half of you were not paying attention for whatever reason. Half the time we're not paying attention to whatever we're trying to do. And of course, the implications of this are huge. How does that impact your effectivity at work? How does that show up when you're having virtual meetings? I mean, they're hard enough to have, but if everybody's so distracted, are they really worth your while having, or could they be a lot shorter if people were focused?
So physical distractions, Ellen is saying,
yeah,
having the 6-year-old. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so then we have kids knocking on the doors or cats jumping in front of your screen while you're having a meeting.
Yeah, so it's distractions from the outside world as well as distractions from the inside world, your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs.
Yeah, totally, totally. And so there's a huge cost associated with this. Interpersonally, you kind of know also when you're with somebody and you're having a conversation, but they're actually thinking of lunch, thinking of what they're going to do in the next day. It interferes with relationships, whether that's at work or at home. It interferes with your productivity, and it actually interferes with your mental well-being as well, because the two most common psychological problems that most of us are facing right now, anxiety and depression, actually also move us out of the present moment. With anxiety, your mind shifts into the future, all the what ifs. What if the schools close again? What if our business doesn't return to normal for a long time? What if I have to go to the office and I have kids at home? And some of these, of course, are realities, but a lot of our what ifs never plan out to be a reality. And we waste a lot of time and energy in these loops of worrying about stuff, and then it can impact our sleep, and we're just constantly on edge. The other issue, depression and rumination, brings our mind into the past, where we're chewing over all the bad decisions we've made, all the wrong things that may have happened to us. If only I could undo this, and why did this or that happen to me, right? Do you want to add anything to that, Crystal?
Yeah, so I think we'll do that after the exercise. Yeah.
So the way to counteract your mind wandering into the past and future, and the way to practice your mind being more present, where you then can make better decisions, you can connect more with the people that are important to you, and you can also manage your mental well-being, is by practicing mindfulness. Now, a lot of you may have heard the term, and maybe some of you have practiced it already. The term also sometimes is confusing. People think of it as, oh, something you do in the yoga studio, or it's esoteric or associated with some kind of religious practice. I actually, as a psychologist, like to reframe it as mind training or brain training or focus training. Because we also know nowadays from the study of neuroscience and psychology that if we were to look at your brain while you're doing this kind of practice, it actually changes your brain connectivity, it downregulates your emotional centers, and it brings the front of your brain online that's related to being present and making good decisions. But again, rather than me just talk abstractly about this, I want to run you through a little bit of a longer practice of what this actually feels and looks like, and then take some time to unpack that with you afterwards, if that's okay. So basically what I'm going to guide you through is a focusing practice, because I want you to be able to be more intentional in your focus so that you can then shift your focus more into the present moment.
And I also want to say that for a lot of you who've written in the chat box that you do have little distractions, people, small people running in and out of the room making big noises. We have 2 kids as well, so we know what that is like. The interesting thing is that a lot of people think that when I'm practicing mindfulness, it's about relaxation, like, at the end of yoga where I lie down and I just still the mind. That's not what we're talking about when we say mindfulness. The process of mindfulness, as we define it, is active noticing. So it's taking a pause to tune in to what's going on. So when you tune in, you may find, oh, actually inside I'm feeling frustrated or anxious, or what I'm noticing is that there's a lot of noise going out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Zen moment, but it is a live moment. It's actively noticing what's going on in your life. And in a sense, this process is about allowing your mind to focus. And then what's going to happen is your mind's going to get distracted and go away to something, the sounds, whatever it is. And you're going to tell your mind to come back. And every time you tell your mind to come back, that is the practice. That is exercising the muscle, the coming back muscle. Yeah? So Greg, take it away.
Right. So if I can ask you again, if you're sitting in a chair, to sit upright with your feet firmly grounded on the floor, because by simply sitting upright, you're already waking up your nervous system. You're signaling to your brain, oh, something of interest might happen. And you're already sharpening that focus. You're bringing your body into the present moment. And the feet grounded on the floor also will help us to use our body sensations to feel grounded in a way in the present moment. And then we want to reduce visual distractions. So either closing your eyes or looking down. And we're going to practice shifting your focus deliberately, beginning with bringing your focus all the way down to your feet. And be curious about what can you notice at your feet right now. Perhaps the contact with the floor, tingling, warmth or coolness. And if there are no sensations, noticing that as well. Then shifting your focus deliberately now to your hands, noticing where you've placed them, the contact with your skin or clothing or anything else. Their contact between your fingers perhaps. Noticing if your hands feel heavy or light. And then shifting your attention now to the contact your body is making with the chair or whatever you're sitting on. Is there any pressure? Noticing the weight of your body. The support that you're being given. And then next, shifting your attention now to the physical sensations of breathing. So taking a moment to locate where in your body can you sense your breathing the most. This could be at your belly rising and falling, or the chest area expanding and releasing, or the air going in and out at your mouth or nostrils. And once you've located your breath in your body, rest your attention there and follow your breath all the way in and all the way out. And from time to time, you will notice that your mind has wandered away. We already expected that to happen, not a problem at all. Either to distractions from the outside sounds or distractions from the insides, the to-do list, worries, planning, boredom, whatever. Not a problem. When you notice that your mind has wandered away, gently but firmly bringing it back each time to your chosen focus of awareness, like sensations of breathing right now. So coming back to your breath. And you may have to do this many, many times. That is the mental practice. That is strengthening your ability to focus. And taking 3 more breaths with your full awareness. And then checking in one more time. How are you feeling right now? And also about the quality of your mind. Are you feeling more calm and present? Or are you perhaps more distracted and aware of how much is going through your mind? No right, no wrong. This is an awareness practice that then becomes useful to attend to whatever you're noticing. Then opening your eyes with the next out breath. Welcome back. So let's do a little bit of a poll here. Whose minds wandered into the future? If you notice future distractions, you can click future, or sorry, you can type in future. If your mind tended to wander more into the past, you can write past. If it's gone into the past and into the future, type that into the chat box, because our minds are amazing in terms of time traveling, right? But
Lots
so
of
interesting,
future.
lots of future.
Almost every,
Okay.
like 80%
right,
future.
which of course
some past and future.
Also fits with when there is more anxiety and more anticipating about what's to come next, right? Returning back to work, are the kids going to school? How am I going to manage? So the kind of collective anxiety that we're experiencing also moves us into the future. But of course, that's not to say future planning is great. You need it for making business decisions, for planning your next trips and getting the kids ready for school. So I'm not saying it's bad, but it's about recognizing, is this future planning and future focus useful at any given moment, or would it be helpful to come back to this moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the thing is that we know that the more time your brain spends in the present moment, the more powerful you feel, and also the more well-balanced and calm you will be. Because a lot of the kind of future orientation is like what Greg said, 10 units of energy put into worrying about things that you can't control equals 0 units of result, or for all that effort. So we really want to rebalance and draw your attention mostly back to the now. So when you're eating, can you actually focus on the sensation of eating and enjoy your food? Can you actually, when you're with your kids and spend quality time with them, even though they might be distracting you the whole of the day, but are there actually moments where you are able to really absorb their presence and be with them, for instance?
And this is a really powerful and useful technique if you're finding yourself lying in bed and going through all the stuff you didn't accomplish and planning for the next day, to stay present. And it's like, okay, actually now I need to relax and release and get a good night's sleep. And then tomorrow you can pick up on what else you need to do, right?
So we also wanted to give you a short form version of that exercise, because sometimes during your day, it's just not possible to have Greg guide you for 3 minutes in mindfulness. But there's a micro practice you can do, which is called 3 breaths that you can really do to reset and reboot yourself. So how it works is this, with your first breath, you're going to pay attention to the fact that you are breathing, and you're going to locate your breath in your body where you feel it the strongest. With the second breath, you're going to use that second breath to relax your body. And then with your third breath, you're going to ask yourself, what's important now? So we can actually do this all together. So taking a first breath now, taking 1 deep breath, locating where you feel your breath in your body, and then breathe out. Now take in the second breath and use that second breath to relax your body. As you breathe out, just let all your muscles relax a little bit. Now take your third breath, and as you take your third breath, ask yourself, what's important now? How do I want to show up? What's important for me right here to make the most of my energy and my focus?
Yeah, and I see a comment from Nicholas, a sense of finding it really hard or impossible right now to relax. And I totally relate to that. Sometimes I feel so uptight. It seems like I just can't shake it. It takes practice. So this is just like physical exercise to get fit, to run a marathon. You need to put in some practice to build up physical muscle. You need to do some weight training. This is the mental training to enhance your focus, and also the releasing of the stress. It takes practice and some effort. So don't give up if you didn't feel relaxed just now. And these are stressful times. So also be kind with your experience, right?
I also want to add that oftentimes when people feel like the static, still movements are a bit, mindfulness is a bit hard to get into, oftentimes they have a base level of agitation. And to go from agitated to still is too big of a jump for some people. So in that case, we get them to do a little bit of shaking. And Nicholas, you can even try this right now if you can't relax. You can even just try just shaking your hands and moving your head and really trying to kind of flick your wrist just for about 30 seconds or so. If you look at animals in the wild, after they've experienced a stressful encounter, maybe like your dog after it's been bathed and it does this shaking motion, or after a gazelle's been chased by a cheetah and gets away and you see them do this kind of shake. A lot of scientists have studied that shaking motion is very, very important for actually what they call completing the stress cycle. So stimulus happens, something scares you. And then second part is the stress response, where your body releases all these stress hormones that make you feel really antsy and you can't relax and adrenalized. And then the third part is actually you need to complete the cycle and signal to your body that it's safe again. So you can complete the stress cycle through physical activity, jogging, moving, shaking is very, very effective, but completing that stress cycle is very important. And after you complete it, you can actually move into stillness, into contemplation, into that kind of closed eye mindfulness practice that we talked about a lot easier. Yeah. Okay, so we want to move on to a quick technique. Next time you're triggered, we like to recommend a technique called SBNRR. So the first step in SBNRR is stop. When you're triggered by an email, somebody cutting you off in traffic, whatever, angry comment, the most important part is the S, stop.
Yeah, or with your kids as well, right?
Yeah. The second part is breathe. And we recommend you take at least 3 breaths. It takes 6 seconds for your logical brain to activate. So you want to take at least 3 breaths. And then in those 3 breaths, the third step is to notice. And what can you notice? So you can notice the outside world, the colors, the sights, the sounds, what's going on outside. But you can also notice what's going on inside. What am I thinking? What are my emotions? And what do I want to do?
Your body sensations. You're finding yourself clenching your jaw and making fists and sweating, getting ready to attack. It's like, oh, okay. Is that serving me well right now? Or do I need to just release that? Yeah,
the fourth step is to reflect. When you reflect, that's when you ask yourself, what's important now? What is truly important? Is this small stuff that I shouldn't sweat, or is this really important? And then the last part, R, is respond. And that's to choose a wise and considered intentional decision. So SBNR is a technique that a lot of people tell us they really use every single day. They put a Post-it on their laptop and they practice this. So it's a practical one to use at work and in life as well. So I want to kind of pause there because we're going to in a moment move on to the second and third parts of this. Are there any quick questions on mindfulness that anybody has to address at the moment?
How to get going, anything you're confused about? I'd be really happy to address any of those.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Okay, if not, we're going to move on. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a overactive, oversensitive mouth at the moment. So let's move on to the second part of this seminar. And we want to talk about courageous crisis leadership practices. By the way, I want to pause here and say, if you're not a assigned leader or a formal leader, maybe I want you to know that when we say leader, I'm really talking about anyone who has to make good decisions. That means mothers as well. Anyone who has a responsibility for holding the culture and has responsibility for other people. So you could be a mother and be an amazing leader. You could be a leader at work. You could be an entrepreneur and be a leader. That's what I mean as well. Nicole has asked, is there other techniques to try to guide children to be mindful? Is this the same approach? We can send you some resources and talk about that at the end of the seminar. Greg, do you want to
just very briefly, there's a great app called Smiling Mind from Australia, which you can choose different age brackets and they have guided practices for that. So we'll share that later on.
Yeah.
it's mostly making it shorter and making it more fun.
Yeah, like putting a stuffed toy on top of your
Yeah.
child's belly, getting them to lie down, put the stuffed toy on their chest, and then try to make them use their breath to move the stuffed toy up and down as much as they can, and little techniques like that.
But feel free to email us afterwards for any resources and guided practices. Okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. So let's move on to leadership practices. So I want to talk about the concept of holding. And we know from developmental psychology that in a crisis, we all need what psychologists call holding. Holding is the way an authority figure contains and interprets what's happening in times of uncertainty. If you were young and when you were distressed and you didn't like something, if your mother or father was able to look at you and say, "Oh, honey, I can see that you are distressed, and that's perfectly okay," that was holding. But oftentimes what happens is the authority figure says, "Nah, you'll be fine. You'll be right. Oh, you're fine," you know? And actually then what we learn is that, okay, it's not okay to feel what I feel. And actually I end up not being clear about how to process it or to describe it. So let me just further define. Containing is being able to calm and soothe anxiety of yourself and others around you. And interpreting is having the skill to help others make sense out of what's going on. So we can do this on an interpersonal level and an institutional level. On an interpersonal level, when we hold others, that means that I'm able to behave in a way that makes other people feel safe, feel comfortable, and feel that it's okay to be who they are. So, you know, those around me can say, "Hey, I'm actually having a really crappy day." And they don't feel like they have to pretend to be up or fake or whatever it is because I won't like it, right? So interpersonal holding is really, really important, but so is institutional holding. So institutional holding is when we create structures and systems and cultures that are fair and transparent, and these systems make people feel held. So if you're a mother, for example, you create a fair kind of reward system or fair rules, family rule system, and everyone knows what the rules are, that's fair. If you're a leader at work, everyone knows these are the policies and so forth, and that's fair, and this is how I'm held. So we'll talk about the difference between these two in a little bit, but let's get straight into interpersonal holding. So interpersonal holding is about helping people process their own distress and anxiety, right? And some of the ways in which you do that is through your own being. One of the first part of, how you need to be is available, but not intrusive. I've seen heard a lot of horror stories from people now who feel like, oh, my boss is checking on me all the time because they don't trust me with work from home and they're sending lots of emails. So it's that kind of balance.
No, they may not be skilled knowing how to do this, right?
Exactly.
But this is about signaling, hey, I'm here for you if you want to talk about something that you're struggling with, or I'm available to help you with what's going on. Just let me know if and when you're ready.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. The second quality of being is being responsive, but not reactive. So not a knee-jerk reaction to every single news article you read. Oh my God, I just read the news article about face shields. Everyone needs a face shield now. I just read this newspaper article about whatever. Everyone needs this now. So it's being able to zoom out and kind of be responsive, but not knee-jerk.
Yeah, and of course your mindfulness practice sets you up for success in this, that you can get a sense of, oh, am I too reactive in jumping the gun? Or, do I need to just listen more than try and problem solve already?
And the third quality of being is being present, but you don't have to be perfect. And a lot of leaders actually feel a small element of shame and anxiety, because I work with a lot of leaders and a lot of them feel like, oh God, I need to know all the answers and I don't, and I feel really inferior. So some of them go into avoidance, or like, trying to be somebody that they're not, or say that they know all the answers when they don't. But it's about really being showing up and saying, here's what I do know, here's what I don't know, but I'm really trying to find out at the moment, and I know I'll get there. But you don't have to be perfect, and we'll unpack that a little bit more as well. So one technique we want to give you to check in with others around you during a time of crisis is this model we've come up with called lens. And I'm going to take you through this model one step at a time. So the first part, the L, is listening with your full attention and empathy. And then the second part is emotional inquiry. So instead of just saying like, what have you done, or what are you going to do, or what do you think? It's very important when you make people feel held to actually ask about emotion. So how did you feel? Or if Greg's sharing something with me, and I might even help him process by saying, hey, Greg, it just seems to me that when you were talking, there was a lot of energy when you said this part. Were you frustrated? Is that how you felt? And then, you know, Greg can say, yeah, that's true. Or no, actually it wasn't frustrated. It was more agitated or whatever it is, but helping people get clear.
And also really important, like, you know, if we just informally ask people how they are, usually they may say okay or good or fine, without that actually being a true reflection of how they actually feel.
Absolutely.
So it's useful to help them get a little bit deeper and say, okay, and how else do you feel? Or what else is there? Or, you know, and how about this project? I feel a little bit anxious about the deadline. How about you? So you can model expressing an emotion. Again, that's what we did at the beginning, and having a vocabulary and being able to check in with how you're feeling through mindfulness, and then helping others articulate that as well helps to get a sense of where they're at, helps to downregulate difficult emotions, actually builds the trust as well.
Yeah, so the third part is normalizing. So when somebody shares with you about how they're dealing, don't say, well, look on the bright side, or at least it's not that, but really listen to them and normalize and say something like, that sounds perfectly normal. Anyone in your situation would feel that way too. And yesterday we held this exercise with the XLT leadership team of a big biopharma company, and we taught them this model. And then after that, when they were role playing, somebody said, even though I knew that that we were going to have to normalize, but when the other person said that's perfectly normal, I just felt this emotional reaction, like, oh my God. Like, yeah, thanks for saying that. So you'll be surprised at how important those few words of normalizing are.
Really powerful.
The fourth step is specific outcome scaling. So when you talk and check in with somebody, ask them, you know, what's the best case you're hoping for? So they might say, oh, you know, I'm just really confused. I have no certainty and I need the team to be more motivated, Then you might say, well, out of all the things you've mentioned, what's the most important for you to address now if you could pick one? So they might say, well, I just want my team to submit their reports on time, for example, or my kids to put their, you know, do their homework on time. So then you might say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 is your ideal best case situation where everything's perfect and they're submitting everything on time, what's it like now? And they might say, well, currently we're at a 3. So this is when you say, okay, so what would a 5 look like? What would it take to move to a 5 or to a 6? And then they might say, well, there would need to be a schedule, that might need to have deadlines. And so this process of scaling is important because a lot of times people don't have the language, or people don't quite know how to organize their thoughts. And, you know, if you just like, if with the scale, people who are a little bit more kind of used to talking about logic and rationality, they can actually put things in numbers. It makes it easier for them.
Yeah, and also provides a structure of how to move up and to recognition. Oftentimes that they're not at a 0. And also it may be helpful to say, it's like, hey, was there ever a time when you were a 7 or 8 or 9? And then they say, oh yeah, actually I remember just 3 months ago, there was a similar situation. And what helped me get through this was I needed these resources and I collaborated with whatever person and this helped me. And they're like, oh, okay, would it be helpful to do that again? Or how can I support you with that?
Absolutely. Which brings us to the last point, which is strengths and support. As a leader, you need to reinforce the strengths and the support that the individual has so that their mind gets focused away from the negative to the positive psychology, right? So you ask them, hey, what difficult times have you had where you've done things similar times that what are the similar challenges that you've had where you've tried things that have worked before, or what previous successes have you had? What kind of strengths do you have to draw on this, for example, and what kind of support do you need? So we're going to also give Safreen the handout so you guys have this model, but we really encourage you to practice this with those around you and see how that goes. I want to move on now to the last part, which is institutional holding. How do we do this as an institution? So these are the key points. Institutional holding is about transparency, getting data, directing people's attention, and having authenticity plus authority. So quickly, let's look at that. Transparency and clarity. Make sure that in a field of constantly changing key priorities, people know what the key priorities are. Is there a system, a weekly dashboard, so that everybody knows these are now the top 5 priorities? How can you clarify who is doing what? People need to know. And you know, you'll be surprised, a lot of the feedback we get from our clients who are even quite senior leaders, they're like, I don't want to disturb my boss. She or he is so busy. I don't want to disturb by asking. And because they don't have clarity, they go off and they do things which are just totally conflicting and not aligned. Also, having transparency about salaries, benefits, working arrangement, as far as you can, also very important, and dispelling rumors. What we're also seeing on the ground is, sorry, in a crisis, people tell themselves stories and sometimes get a little bit paranoid and start speculating about stuff. So it's very important to have this transparency to stop the drama. The second part is getting data and feedback. So building direct connections to your front line, like who, if in a business, who are the knowledge, the first people who get the knowledge of what's going on the ground, who are the influences, formal or informal, in your company or your system. Make sure that you're checking in with them. Use the lens model that we talked about. Check in with them frequently. Have pulse surveys on how staff are coping, internal wikis on like what the best practices are, and also make space for conversations about job security, managing career expectations, because you're high performers, you don't want to lose them in this time. And we are seeing a lot of, for whatever strange reason, a lot of high performers are contacting us and saying, oh, we're thinking about a career transition at this point of time, because this is kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I have a future here. Third point, direct attention. I'm just very quickly going to say, make sure people know how to find out the support that your company already has and invest in the support, the counseling, the coaching, the training, the mental health days. Greg just did this amazing mental health day for Spotify where he was the doctor in the house in residence. And we had so many, like 20 people sign up for appointments that said, I would have never made an appointment to see a psychotherapist before, but because, you know, this was a kind of like roadshow and everyone was doing it, it was like, okay, I just want to ask Greg a question on how I can get better. Because counseling is really a more like, it's really a coach who had to study for 10 years to get there. That's what I always say at least.
And also just helping to destigmatize mental health problems, that, hey, in this time, we all need some extra support. And this is just like, if you're feeling unwell, you go to a doctor. If you need a coach for business issues, you seek a coach. Mental health is just another part of health.
Yeah, I also want to say it's very important to direct people's attention to the positive stuff. Your job as a leader is to direct their attention away from the news cycles, away from the drama. Direct them to, what is it for? How does your contribution fit in? And even collect stories or even small emails from your happy customers or clients or whatever. And like, hey, Greg, you know, I just got an amazing email from this person who talked about you. I just want to celebrate that, you know, make sure that there's those tidbits of positive news that are coming through to ameliorate the negative news cycle that is just constant.
Yeah, and helping people reconnect with the meaning and purpose of what they're doing.
And yeah, like I said, shifting their mind from what they can't control, that's all the stuff on the left-hand side of the slide. You can't control what others think, say, COVID, government, can't control. Directing them to what they can control. They can control their goals, their mindset, their effort, how they communicate, their self-care routine, what learning, what skills they're picking up.
Yeah, and a really, really interesting exercise perhaps you can do in your own time is just look through the day. How much of your time are you spending on stuff that you can control versus what you can't? And oftentimes I see a lot of people waste time and energy, and then they're wondering why they're exhausted, why they're not sleeping, why they're not as productive as they could be.
Okay, last part of this institutional holding part is authenticity and authority. It's a balance. Some people like go into like this whole like, oh, I have to be authentic all the time and vulnerable all the time. Now imagine you just hired me as your business coach, okay? And you came to me, and before we started the session, I'd be like, hey, you know, I just want to fess up, right? I'm just feeling the imposter, you know, like an imposter, and I feel like I really don't know, I don't have my stuff together and all that. Would that make you feel safe? Obviously not. And what we need to do is make people feel safe with a combination of authenticity and authority. So it would be very different if I had said, hey, you know, I'm having, I had a bit of a wobble this morning with my kids because, you know, my youngest was blah, 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 and told a story about a family. So you choose where you gonna be vulnerable. Like I would recommend that it's an area which is not the domain expertise. that people are looking to you for. So don't say, actually, I'm a fraud. I have no clue how to do my job. But you can also say that, you know, in a crisis, this is very stressful. And I've been feeling, you know, that I haven't been spending enough time with my family, for instance, right? So it's about saying things like, this is what I do know. And this is what I don't know, but I am going to find out. And I have a plan for that. That's authenticity and authority. And during the same hardships, I'm going through this stuff as well. And I'm not going to be dismissive about what anybody says about this, but we're all in this together, and asking for help and support, because you don't have to do it all by yourself. It's okay as a leader to ask for help, whether it's internally or whether it's externally outside of your company.
Yeah, and particularly if you have a team and you want them to come to you to ask for help or say that they need support, you got to model that as well, that it's okay in the culture of where you work to ask for help, to say things are not going well, and to talk about problems and failures as well.
Absolutely. It's super important point Greg's bringing out, because when you are authentic and when you are appropriately vulnerable and real with other people, you make it safe. You make it safe for other people to also talk about failures and mistakes and challenges they might have. But a lot of times in Singapore in particular, I work with a lot of Singaporean institutions, and I'm Singaporean, so I can say this. A lot of times authorities will say, fail forward, you're not innovative enough, you're not trying things, more things, so you're not being daring enough. But then when you ask the authorities to talk about their own failures, they're like, I can't talk about my own failures. So that doesn't make it safe for anybody. So it's about having that walking the talk attitude. Just to summarize things, this is the quick summary of interpersonal versus institutional holding and how you can do both. And you can maybe take a little screenshot at this page, but you can see that both of these accomplish the same purpose. We're creating psychological safety in those around us, in the culture, in the people as well. And it's super important because crises are called crises because they impact people. And that means that in a crisis, we need to be even more human. So authenticity and psychological safety and creates that high performance that we are after for all of us, however we define success.
Yeah, and that's of course personally and includes your mental well-being as well as organizational success. It's really hard to separate the two.
Yeah, and I really want to end off on this quote here, because I love this quote by Donald Winnicott. He said, good holding not only makes us more comfortable and more courageous, it makes us who we are, our identity. If we didn't get that holding from the people around us when we were young, we don't really know who we are, what we feel, what we're about, what matters. So when you are able to hold others, it gives them a sense of, oh, that's who I am, and that's okay. And that's really, really important as a leader. You'll find that good leaders who are able to hold their teams, they are loved, they are cherished, they leave a huge legacy behind. And years afterwards, people remember how they made them feel, not the things that they did, not the advice that they gave, but this leader made me feel this way, and this person cared about who I was. So in summary, we've done quite a lot today. We've learned about maintaining your energy and focus with mindfulness and the importance of institutional holding. We've learned the lens model and some best practices for institutional holding. And we're also directing you to kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture, because all crises are just slices in time, very challenging slices, but still life is going to shift and mutate again, and we're going to deal with different challenges. So it's about how do we actually zoom out and see the big picture and refocus, rebalance, and redirect our attention to the resources that we have.
Yeah, so we have some time left for questions.
Yeah, I have a comment here from Jed. I feel much more comfortable now and reassured I've been supporting my team in the right manner.
Great.
Thank you so much. Right. Wonderful.
Right. And you know, a lot of the stuff that we've shared is also, you probably have been doing it at times, or you are doing it in times of challenge and crisis. Be even more intentional, like, oh yeah, I need to do more of this, and this will get you the results that you're looking for. Awesome, thank you.
I just want to type in our email addresses so you guys can send us emails on any follow-up questions.
Other comments or questions that you may have.
Yeah. Oh, Wan Ying's popped back. Hello, Wan Ying. Yeah, just putting our
I wanted to ask from an organizational point of view, like, how do you deal with sort of negative colleagues or colleagues who seem to always be, you know, bringing the mood down or always complaining. There seem to be certain personality types that are just, you know, particular that way. So how would we deal with it so that we don't allow them to sort of affect us?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the first step is, again, curiosity and empathy, trying to figure out, hey, what's going on for you? And sometimes they may have a good reason. Somebody may be sick, somebody may have passed away, they may have a health issue. Don't just assume, oh, they're just, you know, difficult or annoying people and write them off. I know there are those as well, but again, like, actually, what's the layer underneath? We all have a story, and sometimes they may not tell you. We had another client, and somebody was sharing a similar story. They asked him, said, oh, they had all kinds of performance issues, were causing trouble for their team. And the line manager asked them, hey, what's going on for you? There's nothing's going on. And only after, I think, the 5th time where they stayed curious and they asked him, they opened up and said, actually, my wife is in the hospital. She's diagnosed of cancer, and it's really overwhelming to me, and I didn't know how to speak with you about that.
A lot of people grow up in a situation where it wasn't safe for them, and a lot of people have trust issues. So sometimes we find ourselves getting frustrated because it's like, okay, what's going on with this person? And if we're a little bit patient and we just kind of like give them a little bit more leeway, oftentimes people are testing you to see whether you really care.
Right.
Do you really care? Maybe they like, okay, this person doesn't, I'm testing. Sometimes you'll be surprised after like 5 times or 6 times, then they start, you know, giving you what's really going on.
And then, of course, try to differentiate. Is it a skill issue? They don't know how to manage their frustration, or they don't know how to do the task, and that's why they're struggling. Or is it an attitude that they don't want to collaborate and they're maybe not happy in their job? And very different solution to those two, right? If they don't know how to manage their anger or their frustration or their overwhelm, it's like, hey, you know, we have a program here that teaches relaxation or teaches mindfulness, or, you know, we have an internal coach that can help you learn skills to better collaborate, to have empathy and mindfulness.
Yeah, oftentimes it's very hard for you as a colleague or within the organization to go into sensitive areas as well if you suspect that there is something that's, you know, bigger and more hidden. So it may be good for them to find a neutral third party. It could anybody from a counselor, coach, you know, third party who's able to provide a little bit of a safe space for them. But as a leader, if it's impacting performance and you are directly responsible for that person, I always say that you need to have a feedback conversation with them. You need to say, okay, I empathize, I hear you, I see you, and what you're saying is really important to me. At the same time, everyone on this team is expected to X, Y, Z. That's just being professional. So I'm here to support you and hold you accountable to how you're going to do A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. Let's make an action plan together. They might need you to coach them a little bit, but, you know, always make sure it's that balance of empathy and authority. Yeah. I want to just quickly touch on Alex's question here. The people who need meditation the most are the type A people. They're the ones who are the least likely to meditate. How do you convince them? I'm going to give one suggestion, then Greg will probably chime in. For me, a lot of people with big egos or like already fixed in their ways, a kind of sneaky way I found around that is to convince them on how this is good in general for other people, and then kind of like show them how they may be able to teach this to their teams. So, you know, if you actually give them the tools, you'll find that when somebody has to be the teacher, they actually have to understand and practice a lot more. And in that process, you know, you give them a little bit of authority and say like, you know, this is so useful. It's so amazing if you could model this to other people because they really need it. Yeah.
And also kind of sometimes making it not about them personally, like, oh, you need this, or, you know, you are so distracted or controlling. And again, zooming out that this is more about the culture, or even, hey, if we've read about this, this will help us achieve our results quicker and faster. And then if they're the boss, they would like to take credit for that. It's like, okay, if that's what it takes, maybe I'll sign up and see what that's like.
I guess the last point on that, Alex, is that different people have different communication styles. So there's 4 basic types. There's the analyst type where they're looking for like to lower risk. And there's the promoter type where they're looking for the big picture and the excitement and, you know, the grand schemes. And then there's the controller type where it's all about results and deadlines. And then there's the supporter type where it's about the relational. So depending on the personality type of your type A personality, if it's somebody who's really concerned about results and productivity, like the controller type, you just sell it to them that way, that this is about ROI, this is about focus, this is about effectiveness. If it's a promoter type that is about the big picture, you got to paint a picture of how this is really going to galvanize the institution and be a great showcase for whatever.
Yeah.
If it's a supporter type, you're going to paint a picture about this is going to help interpersonal collaboration and the warm fuzzy factor. And if it's an analyst type that's really kind of conservative and data driven, you're going to say, well, this is going to lower our risk because we got all these safety and quality control or QC issues, and you teach them focus and mindfulness, it's really going to help us lower that. So know your audience and know how to pitch things to your audience as well. Yeah. Super helpful. Alex says, well, we're glad that helped a little bit. And of course, like, you know, honestly, we could talk about this for like a whole week. Yeah, but Greg wants to kind of end off with 3 mindful breaths all together.
Yeah,
and
because
then,
it's like, again, this is also reset. You've got to move on to your next part of the morning or the day. So if I can invite you all one more time to sit upright and close your eyes or simply look down and take 3 deep, intentional breaths in and out. And just be fully present to everything that was shared and that you've learned and you've been curious about. One more breath in and out. And once more, check in with how you're feeling right now. Could be the same feeling, could be a different feeling. The wisdom of your emotions, really important to be aware of and how they impact your life and your relationships. If we could invite you one more time, just a quick poll of what emotions are around right now. Crystal is feeling grateful. If you could type in one word,
relax,
open your eyes,
grateful,
closed.
energized,
hopeful, right?
calm.
It's great. So interesting from a lot of anxiety that was around, how it can shift.
Educated. I love that.
Inspired,
really
confident,
calm.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and just notice, guys, it's been 1 hour, not even 1 hour. And nothing's changed in the outside world. They still haven't found a vaccine yet. I'm sorry, but you know, it's been 1 hour. Okay, sorry. But you know, from this, it's how you actually control your mindset, what you focus on, what you do for yourself that determines your emotions and your ability.
Yeah, and this was an hour that you took out for yourself. This is self-care, this is intellectual stimulation, this is managing your mental well-being, this is tapping into your curiosity. So this has been nourishing. Give yourself that every day in some shape or form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great clarity. I know you guys, some people got to run. So thank you so much for those of you who have to run. We're here still if you have any other questions, but Wongying, anything else you want to say in closing?
No, absolutely. No, thank you very much to Krista and Greg. I personally feel very invigorated. It seems to be something every time I listen to the 2 of you present, I walk away with feeling stronger. So thank you so much again. You can find out more about their leadership work at forrestwolf.com, and their book, Deep Human, is available at Kinokuniya or on Amazon.com. So I'd like to also thank our title sponsor, Barclays, who's been a long-time sterling sponsor of the British Chamber and most especially of the Women in Business Committee. We're very grateful to you for your progressive commitment to the cause. Everyone, please note that you will receive an event feedback email. Do take the time to fill it out. It helps us improve and stay relevant for you. And with that, thank you very much to everyone for your time today. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for organizing and having us as well. Really appreciate it.
It was
for
an
you
honor.
And the team. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.